Well, my friends, it's 2010, and I cannot express how disappointed I am. And it's not just politically, although we'll get to politics in just a minute. You know, every time a new decade opens, it's a milestone, and a milestone shows us not only how far we've come, but also sometimes how far we've failed to come. When I was 5 years old, my father took the family to the 1964 World's Fair in New York City. I waited in line for almost 2 hours, which is an almost unimaginable torture for a 5-year-old, in a very slowly moving line on a blisteringly hot day outside of this building, the General Motors exhibit called Futurama 2. Now, the experience I had that day inside that building rewired my brain. It made me into the person that I am today. Many things were predicted in there, as you'll see in just a moment, but the one thing that everyone missed was the internet, and so, courtesy of YouTube, I can show you now what I saw as a little boy. And to a small number of you that were actually there in line with me on one day or another, this will go through you like a hot knife through butter. Take a look at this.
It is now tomorrow. On the moon, there is no air to breathe, no rain to fall. Men in space now monitor the Earth, while men on Earth are finding a whole new world of answers to the worldwide needs of man. 3/4 of our Earth lies beneath the cold, still deeps of the sea, a water world in which we now can find abundance far beyond our dreams. Work easily the rich oil deposits of the continental shelves, while trains of submarines transport materials and goods along the waterways of the undersea. And for our deserts, a new technology. Waters from the sea made fresh as rain to nourish crops planted in the sand. All roads lead, as they have for centuries, to the great centers of commerce and communication that are now truly marketplaces of the world. Its traditions and its faiths preserved, there is new beauty and new strength in the city of tomorrow. But man must chart his own course, a course that frees the mind and the spirit as it improves the well-being of mankind.
You know, there are two things that break my heart watching this, and they're related, but they're separate. I've talked before about the Frankfurt School and men like Saul Alinsky and their plans, which are not secrets, but rather promoted at every opportunity throughout the 60s and the 70s to destroy the heart of America, which stood and stands as a mighty colossus in their path towards the collective big state future of Marxism and socialism. And in the years that I've been trying to combat this horrible, deadly evil, I've often wondered what our world, or at least what our country, would have looked like if they had taken their message back to the European cafes where it originated. And I believe that the world that so motivated me in 1964 would be much closer to reality than the one that we look out upon today. Where did that future go? Where did that attitude go? Even if you grant the global warming proponents the most hysterical of their worst-case scenarios, why is it that all of their political solutions come down to choking to death the forces of innovation, science, and free trade, to do with less and less and less, instead of using our wealth, our ingenuity, and our hard work to live better and cleaner with the technology that's already in our hands? The Chernobyl reactor was a horrible, brutally primitive design that would never have been certified in any Western country, and yet that accident was caused by the intentional shutting down of safety systems in order to run a test that defies human understanding. The 3 Mile Island event, America's worst nuclear accident, caused the death and injury of precisely no one. The French and the Japanese run most of their economies on clean and reliable nuclear power without so much as a hiccup. And the United States Navy has spent half a century packing nuclear reactors and human beings into the same steel tubes hundreds of feet below the surface of the water without a single incident. The world of confidence, of innovation, and free enterprise has almost been destroyed, almost. And where did it go? If we had suffered a global nuclear war, then you could make the case for its departure, but we did not. What is killing this dream, this definitively American idea of optimism and progress? The left is killing it, that's what. The grievance-mongering, lazy, resentful, big state, power-hungry, collectivist fascists started attacking those ideals right about the time that I walked into that building in 1964, and they have never stopped in the 45 years since then. So here we are in 2010, mired in debt, not private debt, not company debt, government debt, $20 trillion of unfunded and unfundable obligations to the nanny state that can never be paid off, and facing which our President and Congress provide not a savings and payment plan, but rather an orgy of additional spending that historians will look back on as the equivalent of a drunken orgy by desperately terrified, gutless libertines in the back room of a ship sinking into icy and dark waters. But that's just the economic cost. What these Marxist university professors have done is far worse than provide the intellectual cover for unparalleled ruin at the hands of massive and unprecedented state spending. That we can recover from. But they have almost succeeded in poisoning the spiritual health of the population, especially the young, which is of course required for you to abandon your personal dreams and ambitions and the belief that you can make them come true. And then you go and get in line at the aid office, where Big Brother will provide you with the housing and the food and the health care and the transportation, all of it getting ever worse, but you won't care about that because you'll feel that you deserve it. You think I'm exaggerating? Take a look at the comments that accompany the Futurama piece on YouTube. A smattering of regret for a lost future of opportunity far outweighed by tidal waves of cynicism, self-hatred, bitterness, resentment, and anger at things like corporate greed, hurled by a population so pampered by the products of those corporations that they cannot see the irony of sipping $6 coffees as they complain about capitalism on $2,000 Apple laptops. That's 2010. That's the world the shamefully, criminally corrupt Congress and this anti-business, anti-prosperity president are the product of. And many people would leave it there in despair and regret. That is certainly what Alinsky and all the others want you to feel: despair, defeat, resignation, and regret. Only we're not going to do that, are we? We are not going to forget who we are. We are not going to forget what we have done, what we can do, and what we will do when we roll back this choking vine of dependency, grievance politics, identity tribalism, and the repression and intimidation known as political correctness. I'm not buying into their future, and you're not going to buy into it either. You can't give up now. We need you. We need every last one of you. In 2010, we can, through hard work, dedication, and an unwillingness to surrender, begin to flush, hey, there's the perfect word, from the Congress, the big state, race-baiting dependency mongers, and replace them with pro-freedom, pro-prosperity optimists. We will do that in 2010. We will. And we'll do it again in 2012. And we'll keep doing it. Look, I know many of you out there look out into 2010 and you see the country and the values that you have loved your entire lives seemingly fading away right in front of you. That's a dark feeling, and I share it with you, but I do not share the conclusion that these power-grabbing statists want you to reach. You know, my favorite character in all of history ever was a professor of rhetoric who taught himself battlefield tactics since there was no one else to do so. And on July 2nd of 1863, he stood at the far left end of the Union line with his men of the 20th Maine Volunteer Regiment at Gettysburg, exhausted, out of ammunition, and facing yet another wave of Confederate assaults that, if successful, would mean the loss of the position, the loss of the battle, likely the loss of the war, which would have meant the loss of the country. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain turned to his desperate, frightened, but determined men, and he said this: "Stand firm, ye boys from Maine, for not once in a century are men permitted to bear such responsibility for freedom and justice, for God and humanity, as are now placed upon you." He told men facing the end of their lives that only once in 100 years are men permitted to be in that position, that to be in such a desperate place, in such a desperate time, was a gift from God and Providence given only to the best and the most fortunate. That's why I love that man, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, because he could see and say that what we face today in this dark moment, as he faced then, is not the end of what we believe in, but rather a new beginning of it. Some lights do not go out, and some causes do not die. Freedom and individual achievement and responsibilities are ideas far too big and far too holy to be squashed by the likes of these pygmies. It's 2010, and my friends, we are going to whip these people out of their boots.